Hello and welcome to the CNBC TV 18 special. I'm Shereen Bhan and we continue our coverage here from the World Economic Forum's annual meeting in Davos. Joining us now is Uday Kotak. Mr. Kotak, thank you very much for joining us. You haven't said a lot during the course of 2016, so strategic silence on your part?
No, I think 2016 has been an interesting year globally and in India. And we're now into 2017. And I'm sure 2017, there will be a lot to say.
Are you feeling more confident about 2017? Because if I were to just look at the macro picture and look at what the forecast and the projections are, much lower in comparison to what we started in 2016.
I think 2017, top of mind is Donald Trump. And we are about a couple of days away from his presidency. And I would watch the first 90 days of the Trump presidency to see how he takes the American economy in which direction. The expectation is that it's going to be a lot more domestic focused. It's going to be combined with a big boost to spending in the US, including infrastructure. And he's now talking like what most emerging markets talk, which is make America great again. So with that, there is also concern about protectionism, about little insular US, the largest economy in the world, and that could have implications for demand for various countries.
So when the mother market is doing as well as the US is expected to do, I mean, he's talked about being the greatest man or the greatest president to create jobs and so on and so forth. You've seen the dollar strengthen, you've seen US equity markets rally post the Trump election. What does this mean then as far as emerging market flows are concerned, and specifically into markets like India?
I think first keep in mind a strong dollar is the opposite of protectionism as well, because it makes imports cheaper.
Yeah.
So you have both the parts moving, and Mr. Trump will have to figure out how he balances these two parts. I was also very intrigued by the presence of the Chinese president here, and the point he made. He's actually trying to take the global stage and say that
globalization is good.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is a very interesting position. And China coming of age here in Davos. So with China doing what it is doing, with US being where it is, the euro benefiting immensely by a weaker euro. And of course, the Brexit issue is there for the UK. You are in a very, very volatile world as we look at it.
But, we've been in a volatile world for several years now. I mean, that's why they call it the VUCA times. But, you talked about the US, you talked about China, Xi Jinping here, selling the China story, the advocate, so to speak, for globalization today. Does India find itself a little bit in the cold, no pun intended?
My sense is India is in a good spot. And I would much rather India focuses on doing a lot of stuff, which I think we are, rather than making too much noise in Davos. And in that context, India's domestic macro in this volatile world is actually looking very good.
Okay.
Therefore, if you look at our current account, our fisc, our inflation, and our macroeconomic management, it's in very good shape.
But if I were to ask you about the other metrics, consumption, credit offtake, private capex, the story hasn't changed significantly. In fact, it continues to be sluggish.
But Shereen, you've taken a very significant initiative in November 2016. And I actually feel that we are beginning to see normalization. Therefore, come this quarter and next quarter, we are seeing early signs on the ground that normalization is beginning to happen. And in fact, the informal economy, which also had a lot of issues with it, is giving way to a cleaner formal economy.
But in the short term, and how do you quantify the short term by when we will actually see the pain starting to ease out of the impact of demonetization on the economy?
I see most sectors in reasonable shape. The sectors which continue to have challenges are real estate, parts of the jewelry sector, and on the margin, things which are at the high end of consumption. Other than that, I think normalization is in reasonable process, and I feel pretty good about the way India is going forward from both a macro point of view and adjusting to a new micro.
So you're saying that demonetization is good for the Indian economy?
My view is demonetization, we should look at it beyond just arithmetic. Demonetization is about if it can change culture. If people believe, and God-fearing people believe, that Indian gods will not accept black money, then we have changed. And if that change happens, we will see a significant increase in the tax to GDP.
Just speaking of arithmetic, what was the kind of deposit number that you saw through this course of demonetization?
I think you should wait for our quarterlies. It would not be correct for me to give you those numbers, but on our quarterlies, we'll give you the full data.
Okay, let me then ask you about the interest rate regime and the kind of bet that the government is placing on significant cut as far as interest rates are concerned. What's your own estimation?
My view is banks have already started cutting MCLR. So we are seeing the pass-through of lower interest rates beginning to flow into the economy. However, I think our domestic interest rates, while they have some room to come down further, including on the policy side, we have to watch what happens with the US. So US, I believe there will be 2 rate hikes in 2017, which is priced in.
When do you see the second one coming?
So let's watch the year. We have to see whether it is 3. If it is 2, that's reasonably priced in. I think most people expect the US 10-year somewhere between 2.75 to 3%. So if it is in the range of 2.75 to 2.8, that's a good place to be by end of 2017. But if it goes the other way, India is in a position where its interest rates are relatively well perched, not to get the adverse shock of high US interest rates.
So how much do you think we're going to see a lowering in terms of interest rates through calendar year 2017?
My sense is 25 to 50.
25 to 50?
On repo.
Okay, on repo. And then, of course, the transmission
Yes.
by the banks. Let me also ask you in terms of the mood within corporate India today. Do you see signs of a pickup as far as private sector investment is concerned? Because it continues to be anemic and elusive.
I think the government is stepping up on the plate for
Which it has
investment.
been doing, yeah.
As far as private sector is concerned, we are looking forward to the budget. I think
What
this
are your
is
expectations from the budget? I mean, every year we talk about having great expectations from the budget, but specifically this year, in the context of what's happened post the 8th of November, what's happening in the US, what is your key expectation from the budget?
My biggest desire from the budget and from policy in India is how do all of us work to dramatically increase jobs. The biggest challenge and opportunity for us in India is to be able to create jobs. And therefore, a boost by government to business, which creates jobs, should be the bedrock of India's policy.
But by what measure? I mean, is it going to be more subs for the textile sector, for the garment sector, for the leather sector? I'm using those as illustrations because that seems to be the obvious low-hanging fruit. But what else would you say specifically the government ought to do?
My view is take jobs as of 31st October by any business. What is the delta jobs created, and give big rewards for that. Because we want more jobs.
Tax breaks.
For countries, for all our people.
So that means tax breaks?
Tax breaks linked to number of jobs created. Delta.
Okay, so tax breaks linked to the number of jobs created.
Absolutely.
But in terms of a reduction in the corporate tax rate, do you believe that the government now ought to review that 25% roadmap that it set out for itself, and perhaps the need of the hour is to do something more radical than that?
I think this is the time for the government to give a boost to private sector business, for small and medium businesses, for job-creating businesses, and for that reward through lower taxation. And this is the opportunity in the budget to go out there and make business get a bit of its animal spirits back.
Would you bet your money on that coming through?
I would bet for India to be doing well through 2017, despite a challenging global order.
But what about Indian equities, and what's your take on where you see Indian equities through 2017 and where you see the currency as well?
I think Indian equities, there are two forces. There is the domestic savings piece and there is the global savings piece. The domestic savings piece is growing dramatically. You're seeing a significant improvement in formal financial savings in India, and this is a big change, which is something I've dreamt of for many, many years. It's finally beginning to happen. Formalization of financial savings in the country. So that is the positive. The counter is with domesticization and protectionism across the world. Money offshore is going back, and we've seen some of the flows out. And therefore, I would like to plan an Indian flow on the basis that we may lose some money globally.
Do you think that if the CBDT circular dealing with indirect, taxes, indirect assets is not adequately addressed, there could be a significant outflow?
I think the government is looking at it. I'm told many investors have made a representation to look at it from the point of view of what is the true purpose of the investors, and I'm confident the government will find a solution.
Where do you see the rupee in 2017?
I think the rupee, if you look at it, is fundamentally it's about levels of differential in inflation, and on that I think I would be broadly of the view that differential in inflation, which would be about 3 to 4%, is what I see as the possible movement in the rupee.
Okay. Everyone here is talking about technology, and technology also in the context of banking. The Kotak Airtel Payment Bank, we just saw the launch of that early this week. What is the aspiration there, and what do you believe could be the big challenges?
Airtel Payments Bank has the advantage of Airtel, which has 260 million customers. The ability of the payment bank to acquire customers and serve customers at the cost to serve is significantly lower than traditional banks. And we therefore believe it's in a segment which we have not been in. It's a segment which is a growing segment in India. And I'm really happy that Airtel Payments Bank has taken off. We are a 20% investor in that. And for us, it's also a great amount of learning.
Are you de-risking yourself as well?
No, I think it's, my view is, I'm thinking about it as an opportunity and of learning about a whole new space and exploring something which is very different from what we as traditional banks have done.
Is this the Uber moment for Indian banking, in a sense?
No, my view is that banking has many facets, and transactions is just one of them. It's an important facet. We see transactions as a space getting commoditized the fastest, but financial services is also about risk management. It's about knowledge and skill, and those businesses will always have opportunity to grow.
Do you see more consolidation in the Indian banking space? I mean, you've done ING, SBI is trying to put together its little subsidiaries. Do you see significant consolidation?
In my view, consolidation...
And do you have any more appetite
I
for
think
more?
there is... Consolidation takes two parts. One is new areas open up which you get into. So you get to a larger sector, okay? And then you say fewer players in the sector. So I think both are happening. And in the short run, you're seeing for the larger sector, newer players coming in. But over time, you will see consolidation happen in the next few years.
I think one of the other issues that India is grappling with and needs to introspect on is the issue of governance, whether it's corporate governance or it's regulatory governance. Do you believe that 2016 has been a disappointing year from that perspective on both counts?
No, my sense is we are all learning, we are evolving, and hopefully both on corporate governance and various areas of governance, India gets stronger as times go.
But is there need now to look at the role of independent directors, boards of companies? Does corporate India need to take a serious review of the manner in which, the independence of boards is maintained?
Having said that, I think we are seeing good tidings in 2017, so let's think about 2017 and move further.
So let me end by asking you what you see as being the single biggest inflection point for the global economy as well as for India in 2017.
I think the single biggest challenge for the global economy is three pivots from a political and economic point of view. That is US, China, Russia. And from the Indian point of view, I think it is us really leveraging our macroeconomic position to getting to high growth rates and making our presence on the global stage so that a year or two from now, we talk about four pivots, which is US, China,
Russia and India. Mr. Kotak, always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for joining us in Davos.